Chapter 3054. At this time in the star-desolate region, near the True Spill continent, Bai Xing and the others appeared. Madam. A group of Chu family guards looked at the True Spill continent in front of them. They frowned and said to Bai Xing, "There seems to be something wrong with that low-level continent." With their eyesight, they could naturally see that there were many powerhouses hidden in the vicinity of the True Spill continent. They didn't place these people's strength in their eyes. But with so many people guarding this place, it was obvious that they weren't powerhouses that a low-level continent should have. They couldn't help but feel a bit nervous. It had to be known that their actions in coming to the True Spill continent were completely hidden from the Chu family. If today's matters were to spread out, then they would all die. Not to mention anything else, just Chu Tianyi wouldn't let them go. This was because this was the place where the woman he loved the most was. This was also the homeland of the young master. Everyone was still very timid in their hearts. They didn't dare to act rashly. Hearing their words, Bai Xing's eyes narrowed. She looked at the True Spill continent in front of her. Although she didn't think that there was anything wrong with such a low-level continent, these Chu family guards were just like the Chu family guards. However, these guards of the Chu clan were on the same boat as her. There was no reason for them to lie to her. Thus, there must be something wrong with the True Spill continent. Let's go. We'll go to the Star Alliance first. Since there was something strange about the True Spill continent, they couldn't force their way in. Compared to these guards, Bai Xing and Chu Yufei were more worried that this matter would be exposed. If that happened, the two of them would no longer be able to stay in the Chu family. Thus, after she realized that something was wrong, she immediately turned around and headed to the Star Alliance. She wanted to inquire about the True Spill continent before doing anything else. After arriving at Star City, she learned that the True Spill continent had already been protected by the Star Alliance. Not only that, but that slut Hu Yenyang and those people from the True Spill continent had a very high status in the Star Alliance. They were protected by the Star Alliance. Damn it! Bai Xing's complexion was ugly. She didn't expect that Hu Yenyang and the others would have such a great fortune. The True Spill continent was only a low-level continent. When she and Chu Tianyi left this place, no one knew of this continent. Even if he mentioned it to others, they would have the same contemptuous expression on their faces. He didn't think that after so many years, the True Spill continent would become famous in the Star Wilderness. Not only that, even Hu Yenyang and the others benefited from it. In that case, how was she going to deal with Hu Yenyang and the others? She didn't care about the others, but Hu Yenyang, her family, Hu, and everyone else in the far west wilderness who knew about her past with them must die. Otherwise, how could she be at ease? But at this time, True Spill continent and Hu Yenyang were being protected by the people of the Star Alliance. If she forcefully killed him, she was afraid that it would immediately attract the attention of the Star Alliance. At that time, unless everyone in the star-desolate region was annihilated, it would be impossible to cover up this matter. And once the Chu family found out about this, she would be finished. As Bai Xing thought this, her heart was suddenly filled with hatred. At this time, she heard the conversation of the people around her. "Hey, did you guys hear? The young miss was driven out by the Lu family." This is so funny. Chapter 3055. Didn't you say that family Ji young master was a good man? He was handsome, strong, and had been engaged to her since they were young. But after she climbed up to the Lu family, she immediately turned her back on him. She deliberately humiliated him at the marriage proposal banquet, and even spread the word that he was a waste. Finally, she was slapped in the face. Now he has been kicked out by the Lu clan. This is the consequence of being greedy. That's right. I heard that the Lu family had received some good news. The young miss thought that they were going to discuss her marriage with the Lu family's young master. She hurriedly brought the people from the Star Alliance over, but they were all thrown out. Oh my God. You didn't see that scene. It was really shameful. Now the whole street is talking about her and the Lu family. The people from the Star Alliance's faction don't even dare to go out. A group of people hurriedly walked past Bai Xing and the others talking about Imo Zhuling. A few days ago he was thrown out of the Lu family's gate. The news had already spread throughout Star City. If it weren't for the fact that the Lu family was involved in this matter, the news would have spread throughout the entire star-desolate domain. Imo Zhuling had done one disgraceful thing after another. Everyone was used to talking about her after dinner. The people from the Star Alliance's faction were too lazy to care about her. They simply didn't forbid the news from spreading. After hearing these words, Bai Xing's eyes narrowed. Young miss. Star Alliance's young miss? On the way to Star City, Bai Xing also heard a lot about Emo Zhuling. But at that time she was too lazy to pay attention to it. She was only focused on the true Spill continent. Now that she heard his words, her mind started to work. The people of the true Spill continent were being protected by the people from the Star Alliance. She definitely couldn't make any more moves. Otherwise it would be troublesome if the Chu clan found out about it. However, just because she couldn't make a move didn't mean that others couldn't. Especially since this young lady of the Star Alliance was a member of the Star Alliance. Her status was high enough. With that thought in mind, Bai Xing immediately sent someone to inquire about Emo Zhuling. Soon, the results of the investigation were presented to her. Bai Xing was even happier when she found out that it was related to Emo Zhuling. I didn't think that this Emo Zhuling would have a grudge with someone from the true Spill continent. Very good. The corners of her lips curled up slightly. She was really sleepy when someone handed her a pillow. She originally wanted to move against those from the true Spill continent, but she never thought that the person she found would also have a grudge against those from the true Spill continent. If that was the case, it would be perfect. Arrange for it immediately. I want to meet Emo Zhuling. Bai Xing was very pleased with herself. According to Emo Zhuling's current situation and the degree of hatred he had towards the people of the true Spill continent, he would definitely agree to cooperate with her. At that time, they would be able to quietly eliminate those people from the true Spill continent. Who would know that it was them? As Bai Xing thought this, she suddenly laughed in her heart. On the other side, as Chu Yufei looked at the name Luo Qingtong, she didn't know why, but the name Luo Xiaoqi suddenly flashed through her mind. This Luo Qingtong was the same as Chu Lingfeng. They both came from the true Spill continent. Could she be that Luo Xiaoqi? Chapter 3056. Because a man and a woman, how could they be the same person? What's more, although Luo Qingtong and Luo Xiaoqi both had the surname Luo, but one was doing well in the Heavenly Wind region, and the other was a lowly person in a low-level star region. Between the two there was no similarity at all. Even if it was a woman dressed as a man, it was impossible. As Chu Yufei thought of this, she immediately threw this matter to the back of her mind. Instead, she looked forward to the beautiful life in the future. After getting rid of those people in the true Spill continent, she and her mother would no longer need to worry about their identity and status in the Chu family. As for Chu Lingfeng, that big fool, with her mother's identity as the patriarch savior, even if he didn't like them, he wouldn't be able to do anything to them. As she thought of this, she smiled smugly. While the two were thinking this, on the other side, Luo Qingtong had also returned to the star wilderness. Seeing the spiritual energy in front of them become thinner, Yan Yang looked at Luo Qingtong and asked, "Master, are we going directly back to the true Spill continent? Do you want to go back to Star City to take a look?" "No need." Luo Qingtong thought for a moment and shook her head. "There's nothing going on in Star City. When the time comes, you can send a message to Xiao and the others. Tell them that we're back." Elder Fong and the others were on the Star Alliance's side, and the Dark Arena had been handed over to them to take care of. With their strength, they were not inferior to the Star Alliance's Alliance Master. Sooner or later, the Star Alliance's side would be Luo Qingtong's. As for Emo Zhuling and the Lu family, after Luo Qingtong finished the matters in the true Spill continent, she would deal with them. Yan Yang nodded. At this time, Luo Qingtong turned to look at Chu Tianyi and asked, "How is it? Your injury?" After returning to the true Spill continent, Luo Qingtong would begin to raise the level of the true Spill continent as well as connect it to the Tuanzi's world. Chu Tianyi was the most important part, so he couldn't afford to make any mistakes here. "It's all right." Chu Tianyi's voice was concise. Hearing this, Yan Yang immediately gave him a cold snort. Who was the one who was crying out in pain in front of her, looking like he was about to die? Yan Yang was so angry that she clenched her teeth when she thought about how she had cried for a long time while looking at his injuries and how he had held her in his arms to comfort her. This bastard, why didn't he just die from the pain? Yan Yang felt that she should not have any sympathy for the other party. Why did she give him the medicine that her master gave her? In the end, this man didn't use it at all. He even hid the medicine and said that it was a token of love from her. How shameless could he be? While Yan Yang was gritting her teeth in anger, Chu Tianyi was also very depressed. If he could, he didn't want to expose his injury. In fact, it was nothing serious. However, Luo Qingtong's medical skills were amazing. If he lied, she would definitely see through it. Chu Tianyi could only tell the truth. Otherwise, he would have pretended for a few more days. Yan Yang's thoughtfulness and gentleness were really rare. Unfortunately, all of his lies were exposed this time. Let me see. Luo Qingtong was still not relieved. Chu Tianyi's strength couldn't be damaged too much. Otherwise, when the core of the true spill continent and the core of the abandoned continent merged, it would fail. Luo Qingtong didn't know what the result would be. Not to mention that if the true spill continent couldn't be upgraded, then her idea of connecting it with the Tuanzi's world would be in vain. Chapter 3057. Lin Mingya didn't seem to mind. She stretched out her hand. Luo Qingtong pressed Chu Tianyi's wrist. After checking for a while, she suddenly looked at him. There's something wrong with your injuries. Luo Qingtong couldn't describe that strange feeling. Chu Tianyi's injuries were no longer that serious. Previously, he had been burned by the Yin Demon King's attack. His injuries seemed to be much more serious than this. Not only that, the strength in his body had recovered very well. From the looks of it, there was nothing wrong with this. But for some reason, after Luo Qingtong pressed Chu Tianyi's pulse, she felt that something was wrong. Hearing her words, Yan Yang, who had been glaring at Chu Tianyi, was stunned. Chu Tianyi was also clearly taken aback. There was something wrong with his injuries? But all this time his injuries had been recovering in this way. And this time the Yin Demon King's power had a corrosive effect. Therefore his internal injuries healed more slowly. If it had been any other time, his injuries would have healed long ago. As Chu Tianyi thought of this, he subconsciously glanced at Yan Yang. Could it be that Luo Qingtong saw the conflict between him and Yan Yang, so she deliberately pushed him and said that there was something wrong with his injuries so that Yan Yang wouldn't be so angry with him? As Chu Tianyi thought of this, he suddenly felt that selling himself to Luo Qingtong was a good choice. At least she knew to speak up for him at the crucial moment. As he cast a grateful glance at Luo Qingtong, Yan Yang, who was on the other side, was also a little hesitant. Although she felt that Luo Qingtong wouldn't deliberately say that there was something wrong with Chu Tianyi's injuries in order to help Chu Tianyi, everything was too coincidental. She was so angry with Chu Tianyi, but Luo Qingtong said that there was something wrong with Chu Tianyi's injury. Thinking about it, she suddenly frowned and asked Luo Qingtong, "Master, what's wrong with his injury?" "I don't know." Luo Qingtong frowned slightly and said frankly, "My blood pupil hasn't recovered yet. I can't see it for the time being." Luo Qingtong could only vaguely see that there was something wrong with Chu Tianyi's injury, but she couldn't find out what the problem was. The main reason was that Chu Tianyi had a special physique, and the Yin Demon King's baleful Yin Qi wasn't an ordinary power. Therefore, when the two were mixed together, Luo Qingtong couldn't come to a conclusion. Fortunately, her blood-red eyes were about to recover. Once he returned to the true spill continent, he would be able to rest for a while. Luo Qingtong always felt that the exhaustion of her blood-red eyes was a bit strange. In the past, every time her power was exhausted, it would quickly recover. Why was it so slow this time? Was it because she had lent too much power to Ji Feiyu this time? Luo Qingtong didn't use this eye technique much in her previous life, so she wasn't sure if this was the reason. But it didn't matter. Anyway, it would recover soon. Thinking this, she didn't care too much about it. She only told Chu Tianyi that she would wait until they returned to the true spill continent to let him have a look. Luo Qingtong's original intention was to wait until they returned to the true spill continent and then use her blood-red eyes to let him have a look. Chu Tianyi misunderstood Luo Qingtong's meaning. He thought that she was really looking for a reason to stall for time so that Yan Yang would calm down. Suddenly, he looked at her with even more gratitude. Yan Yang's master was really good. Chapter 3058. When Yan Yang saw his exaggerated performance, the little bit of doubt and worry she had disappeared. She hated that she couldn't raise her hand and beat him up. However, she also misunderstood Luo Qingtong's intentions. She thought that the other party didn't want her and Chu Tianyi to become too stiff. Therefore, even though she was full of anger, she didn't do anything. When Chu Tianyi saw her reaction, he thought that Luo Qingtong's words had worked. He immediately put on an even more pitiful act. The group of people made a ruckus as they rushed towards the true spill continent. At this time in the Star Alliance, Mo Zhuling stayed in her room. She felt that there was nothing left to live for. She sat on her bed in a daze. Her clothes were messy and her hair was disheveled. It seemed that she hadn't washed for more than 10 days. The room was a complete mess. She didn't know how long it had been since the room was cleaned. On the table there was some food scattered around. It already emitted a disgusting stench. Zhou had stayed in this room for who knows how many days. Ever since she was driven out of the mansion by the Liu family and thrown back to the courtyard of the Star Alliance, she had been living a life worse than death in this room. Those people from the Star Alliance's Alliance Masters faction, who had been turned upside down by her, hated that they couldn't eat her blood and dig out her flesh. Zhou had been so arrogant before. Now that she was abandoned by the Liu family, the backlash was even more severe. Everyone was trying their best to hit her when she was down. Zhou, the young miss of the Star Alliance, was living a life worse than a beggar on the roadside. Even the beggars on the roadside could find food to eat and clothes to wear. However, Zhou's entire mansion was her enemy. Those servant girls who had been bullied and abused by her before, when they saw her in trouble, hurriedly ran over to deal with her. As for the Star Alliance's Alliance Masters faction, they didn't care at all. Zhou was forced to eat swill and drink urine. He was ordered to crawl on the ground like a dog. Everything that she had done to those maidservants before was now retribution on her. Zhou could do nothing about it. Because no matter how she called out, the black fog that she had pinned her hopes on never appeared. She didn't know if he would appear again in the future. What would she do if the other party never appeared again? Zhou could not believe it. Her heart was anxious and hateful, but there was nothing she could do. At this moment a group of people walked into the room she was in. Miss Star Alliance? Shirahoshi looked at the woman on the opposite bed in surprise. She was like a lunatic. This woman was the miss of the Star Alliance, the one who had a grudge with the people of True Spill Continent. How did she become like this? Was she crazy? If she was crazy, then she would have to find someone else to cooperate with. However, besides Zhou, there was no one else in the Star Alliance who had such a strong hatred for the people of True Spill Continent. When Bai Xing's voice sounded, Zhou instantly looked at her with vigilance. He coldly said, "Who are you people?" Her eyes were filled with bone-deep hatred. In the past few days, those maidservants who hated her to the bone would often lead different men to her residence. The mansion she was in was not the residence of the Miss of the Star Alliance. It was clearly a public brothel. As long as others were willing, they could come and kiss her. Chapter 3059. However, after Bai Xing and the others explained their intentions, she suddenly laughed out loud. Haha. You want me to help you deal with the people of True Spill Continent? Just based on my current appearance? Do you think that's possible? Zhou's voice was filled with mockery. Bai Xing's expression was indifferent. Don't worry about whether or not it's possible. If you can't do it, then we will naturally help you. But to the outside world, all of this is your own doing. After discovering that Zhou wasn't crazy, Bai Xing immediately relaxed and began to discuss conditions with her. She didn't need Zhou to do anything, she only needed her name. As long as everything was done in Zhou's name, what did anything else have to do with them? Good. Zhou's heart was filled with hatred. She looked at Bai Xing and the others. She didn't even bother to ask who they were or why they wanted to deal with the people of True Spill Continent. She only needed to know that they had a grudge against True Spill Continent. The heavens haven't forsaken me yet. Luo Qingtong, you wait. Zhou's expression was ferocious. She had already placed all of her debts on Luo Qingtong and the Liu family. In her opinion, if it weren't for Luo Qingtong stealing her chance to be with Xianxia, how could she have ended up like this? She had abandoned Ji Feiyu and hooked up with the Liu family. Wasn't it all to deal with Luo Qingtong? That slut, if it weren't for her, she wouldn't have ended up like this. Zhou didn't reflect on her actions. She only thought that she could have had a better life. It was Luo Qingtong and those people from True Spill Continent who had ruined her chance. Moreover, those people from True Spill Continent, those sluts, they were clearly the lowest of the low, and yet they dared to oppose her in the Star Alliance. If that wasn't the case, why would she be looked down upon at the proposal banquet and even be despised by Lu Yu? It's their fault. It's all their fault. And those people from the Liu family, they were all cheese. Zhou did not believe that Lu Yu hated him just because of what happened at the proposal banquet. She must have casually made up a reason that allowed him to find some sort of treasure in the True Spill Continent. There was actually a treasure in that shabby and lowly place. D***, so that time when she casually threatened that man, she really hit his soft spot. If she knew this would happen, then she would have had the black fog attack True Spill continent from the very start. Zhuling would be filled with regret. She wasn't stupid. After realizing that Lu Yu might have been using her all this time, she immediately realized that Lu Yu and the others were most likely aiming for the True Spill continent. And the lie that she casually made up might have allowed them to find something in the True Spill continent. Why did fate always favor that slut Luo Qingtong? If she had discovered this earlier, things would have developed in a different direction. Zhuling's heart was filled with hatred. But in front of Bai Xing and the others, he didn't mention a single word. She wanted to hide this matter. When the time came, she would take the treasure by herself. She would let these people fight to the death with the Lu family and those from True Spill continent. As Zhuling thought this, he suddenly sneered and agreed to Bai Xing's request. Chapter 3060. Bai Xing and the others didn't care about these things. She didn't put the Lu family in her eyes at all. It was just a family from the 7-star field. They could be destroyed at will. Therefore he didn't hesitate and agreed to this matter. After Zhuling saw them agree, she immediately sneered. She didn't let Bai Xing and the others immediately deal with the Lu family. Instead she told them to go back and wait for news. Once they could act, she would naturally tell them. Bai Xing frowned. She didn't know what Zhuling wanted to do. Don't you want to deal with the Lu family? She looked at Zhuling. Of course I want to deal with them, but not now. Zhuling sneered. How could she possibly deal with the Lu family at this time? Lu Yu and the others had just received news about the True Spill continent and hadn't had time to act yet. He was going to wipe them out. Then would the one who obtained the treasure be Bai Xing and the others or herself? Moreover, Lu Yu and the others had treated her so badly. How could Zhuling let them die so easily? She wanted them to die with nothing and regret. In Zhuling's heart, she already had an incomparably sinister and ruthless plan. However, she didn't tell Bai Xing and the others. Instead, she found another reason and excuse. You people are so strong, but you don't dare to face the people of the True Spill continent. I naturally have to think about my future. I will deal with the people of the True Spill continent. But the Lu family also has enmity with the people of the True Spill continent. Let them rush to the front. It will be good for you and me. As soon as she said this, Bai Xing and the others immediately felt that there was no problem. After all, Zhuling's idea was correct. With their strength, it was normal for her to have misgivings. However, her thoughts were so thoughtful. How could she have fallen to such a state before? Bai Xing was surprised. Zhuling looked at her with eyes full of hatred. How did she end up in such a state? Naturally, it was because of Luo Qingtong. That bitch. He would never let her off. Zhuling's eyes were cold as he dismissed Bai Xing and the others. When the latter left, he left behind 2 guards of the Chu clan to protect her. At the same time, it was convenient for her to contact him. Zhuling left the 2 Chu clan guards in his room. Then he left the mansion in a disheveled state. In the Lu family, Lu Yu, Uncle Fong and the others were discussing how to deal with the people of the True Spill continent and find out the whereabouts of the sector beast. Just then someone came to report that Zhuling had arrived. That woman still dares to come here again? Lu Yu sneered. He knew all about what Zhuling had encountered in the mansion and he was never tired of it. If it weren't for his permission and acquiescence, how could the people of the Star Alliance's Alliance Master and those maids attack Zhuling so recklessly? Now that he heard that Zhuling had come to see him, he couldn't help but feel that it was ridiculous. It seems that she hasn't learned her lesson in the Lu family. Lu Yu sneered. He was about to order the messenger to send Zhuling out again. Just then the servant said, "Young master, she said that she knows who has the thing you are looking for." Chapter 3061. He looked at Uncle Fong and the others. Uncle Fong and the others didn't think it was possible. However, they were only able to find out about the sector beast with Zhuling's help. Even if she didn't know what they were looking for, she might be able to provide them with some clues that would save them some effort. Also, if they could determine the whereabouts of the sector beast, they would be able to obtain it without anyone knowing. As they thought about this, they said to Lu Yu, "Young master, why don't you meet her? She might be of some use." Lu Yu was thinking the same thing. Seeing that Uncle Fong and the others all agreed, he nodded and said to the person who came to report, "Okay, call her in." He already knew what was going on with the sector beast. If Emo Zhuling still wanted to deceive him or use him, he would let her know what it meant to be worse than death. Emo Zhuling sneered when she was summoned by Lu Yu. He was going to Luo Qingtong Lu Yu and the others. He was going to destroy them all. She walked in, not bothering to hide her filth and disgust. She knew that this was the best way to dispel the doubts in Lu Yu and the others' hearts. Otherwise, why would Lu Yu and the others believe her when she suddenly became clean and confident? Her eyes flashed with mockery and viciousness. Then she followed the gatekeeper and entered the Lu manor. Emo Zhuling, what is it? Just say it. Lu Yu looked at Emo Zhuling indifferently. He didn't even bother to put on an act. Emo Zhuling's appearance was especially disgusting. Looking at his expression, Emo Zhuling sneered in his heart. However, on the surface she said timidly, "Young master, I know I was wrong. I've really been tortured these days. Please be magnanimous and don't torture me anymore. I am willing to tell you everything I know." "Oh." Lu Yu sneered and looked at her. "What can you tell me?" He wanted to test Emo Zhuling. The latter said without hesitation, "You must be looking for that treasure in the true Spill continent, right? I originally thought that it was just an unremarkable accident. However, I didn't expect that you would really find something there. Lu Yu, you approached me because of that, right?" Emo Zhuling sneered inwardly. Previously, when Lu Yu was with her, he said so many vows of eternal love, but in the end it was all bullshit. But it didn't matter. He still had to thank them. Otherwise, she wouldn't have known that true Spill continent was actually hiding such great treasures. Emo Zhuling recalled the scene when he saw Luo Qingtong in the true Spill continent. If she guessed correctly, the thing that Lu Yu and the others were looking for was in Luo Qingtong's hands. Even if it wasn't in her hands, it definitely had something to do with her. As she thought of this, she immediately said to Lu Yu, "I don't know what you're looking for. But since you've heard my description, you must have obtained some harvests in the true Spill continent. Then the owner of that thing should be Luo Qingtong." Of course, even if it wasn't, or if it had nothing to do with Luo Qingtong, she would still make Lu Yu and the others believe that the thing was in Luo Qingtong's hands. Chapter 3062. If you don't believe me, you can ask those people who went to the true Spill continent with me. They should have also seen the phenomenon at that time. It's only because we didn't place such a small low-level continent like the true Spill continent in our eyes that we didn't see the phenomenon. We didn't think that there were any treasures there. Every time Emo Zhuling thought of this, he was filled with endless hatred. But at that time, even if she knew that there were treasures in the true Spill continent, she still wouldn't have been able to do anything to them. Instead, she would have been killed by Xianxia. But later on, if she had been able to wake up and discover something, she would have been able to borrow the power of the black fog to change the current situation. Unfortunately, it was too late to say anything now. She clenched her teeth in her heart, but on the surface she tried to control her emotions. She said, "I admit it. I did lie to you before. I wanted to use the phenomenon to make you believe that the matter at the marriage proposal banquet was caused by the people of the true Spill continent. They were deliberately trying to deal with you. But I didn't think that the phenomenon was actually true. I don't want to defend myself anymore. I only ask that after you obtain this news you can spare me. I really can't bear it anymore." Emo Zhuling knelt on the ground as he spoke. He constantly sobbed, tears streaming down his face. Looking at his appearance, Lu Yu and the others already believed him. After all, Emo Zhuling's pitiful appearance wasn't something that an average person could bear. He couldn't help but collapse. It was normal for him to come and tell them this news and beg for mercy. Lu Yu's eyes narrowed. He looked at him and coldly said, "As long as what you say is true. Of course I won't let anyone find trouble with you." In fact, Emo Zhuling's miserable state had nothing to do with them. It was just that they didn't do anything. They weren't the ones who had dealt with Emo Zhuling. However, Lu Yu was very happy to see him beg for mercy and provide him with this information. As he thought of this, Emo Zhuling sneered inwardly. Obviously, the Lu family had believed her words. Then let them fight to the death with that bitch Luo Qingtong. This way she could sit back and reap the benefits. With that thought in mind, she stammered to Lu Yu, "Thank you, young master. I'll take my leave now." Lu Yu waved his hand nonchalantly and let her leave. After she left, Lu Yu looked at Uncle Fong and the others beside him and asked, "What do you all think?" "I think she's telling the truth. Young master, if that thing is really in the hands of that girl called Luo Qingtong, then we have to be prepared. It is said that her background is not simple. The people of the Lu family were not idle in Star City. They had already found out that there seemed to be an expert behind Luo Qingtong. It was the existence of this expert that made the people of the Star Alliance not dare to offend the people of True Spill Continent. They treated them like bodhisattvas. However, they couldn't find out the identity of this expert. The people of the Star Alliance were secretive about this and didn't reveal anything. However, the people of the Lu family didn't think that this so-called expert was very powerful. Otherwise, why would they need the people of the Star Alliance to protect the people of True Spill Continent? Obviously, the strength of the other party was ordinary. They didn't know if he was from the 7-star field or the 6-star field. Moreover, he was a loner with no influence. Chapter 3063. However, what they didn't know was that Xianxia had been invited away by the Heavenly Dark Guard. He didn't have time to arrange anything else. What's more, there were people from the Star Alliance in the 9-star sector. Coupled with the existence of the Heavenly Capital Young Emperor token, it was enough to prevent most people from harming the True Spill Continent. Who would have thought that the Lu family would find traces of the Sector Beast and track it all the way to the True Spill Continent? When Uncle Fong and the others spoke, Lu Yu nodded and said, "That's right. I'll immediately write a letter and send it back to the family to ask them to send more people." No matter whether the news about the powerhouse was true or not, or how strong the other party was, they had to be prepared. But, Lu Yu sneered. Emo Zhuling came here with selfish motives. I think he wants that girl called Luo Qingtong to have bad luck. I heard that she's not bad looking? Lu Yu raised his eyebrows and looked at Uncle Fong and the others. Uncle Fong and the others understood and said to Lu Yu, "Yes, I heard that the girl called Luo Qingtong is very beautiful." "Young master, you mean, send someone to the True Spill Continent and tell them that I want to take Luo Qingtong as my concubine. Let them think about it." Lu Yu's expression was indifferent. He had always been suspicious of Emo Zhuling's words. However, even if Emo Zhuling hadn't come, he would have thought of starting with Luo Qingtong. After all, she was the actual ruler of the True Spill Continent. As long as he had her in his hands, he would be able to find the whereabouts of the Sector Beast. And the fastest way to control a woman was to make her his woman. At that time she would be his, so would the Sector Beast not be his? This way it would be simple and confidential. It was much better than directly killing his way to the other side and forcing them to hand over the Sector Beast. As Lu Yu thought of this, he suddenly smiled. He was confident that Luo Qingtong would agree. After all, being the concubine of the 7-star field's young master was not something an ordinary person could obtain. Luo Qingtong's status was so low that it was already good enough for her to be his concubine. And this was because she had a powerful expert backing her up. Otherwise, she wouldn't even be able to become a concubine. And as Lu Yu's heart was filled with pride, within the True Spill Continent, Luo Qingtong didn't know what was happening in Star City. She was only surprised as she looked at the completely changed True Spill Continent's mortal world in front of her. The places where the 4 sacred dynasties were located were all connected. The original chasm of the 4 dynasties had completely changed, and the territories of the 4 dynasties were now connected. The entire True Spill Continent had been unified. And near the entrance to the True Spill Continent and the Hidden World, an extremely magnificent royal palace appeared in front of Luo Qingtong. The 2 words Tianyan were floating on it. The totem patterns on it were similar to the Luo clan's flag. "Master, this is the Tianyan Holy Dynasty's royal palace. This is where the old man and the others live. This royal palace was built by the powerhouses of the 4 dynasties and the powerhouses of the Hidden World. They said that they wanted to build the best royal palace for you and the old man." Chapter 3064. Yan Yang introduced Luo Qingtong with a smile. This palace took less than half a month to complete, but in the entire True Spill Continent and even in the entire Star Wilderness, it was comparable to the Star Alliance's headquarters. Luo Qingtong listened and smiled. At this moment, in the direction of the palace, a group of soldiers suddenly appeared and flew over. They were about to inspect their carriage and tell them to stay away from here. However, before these soldiers could get close to the carriage, the leader of the soldiers saw Luo Qingtong's face in the carriage. Then his face instantly flushed with excitement. "It's Her Royal Highness. Quick, quick. Inform His Majesty that Her Royal Highness has returned. Sound the horn. Ring the bell." His voice was hysterical and almost incoherent. The soldiers who were flying over were also stunned for a moment. Then they looked in the direction of Luo Qingtong with incomparable surprise and trembling. When they saw that familiar face, almost everyone's eyes turned red. Then they shouted with incomparable excitement, "Her Royal Highness has returned! Her Royal Highness has returned! Her Royal Highness has returned!" The voices of the crowd reverberated in the quiet palace and slowly drifted into the distance. Then it was as if someone had suddenly pressed a switch in the entire palace territory. In an instant, the entire silent and dark sky lit up with the lights of tens of thousands of homes. Countless soldiers, officers, attendants, and generals all woke up in an instant from the dark and quiet night. In the time it took to take a breath, countless people rushed out from all directions. Everyone looked in the direction of Luo Qingtong with excitement. At this moment, in the direction of the palace, the huge bronze door was fiercely pushed open from the inside to the outside with a bang. Then Grandfather Luo appeared in the sight of Luo Qingtong. Half of his robe was still hanging on his body and one of his shoes was missing. Qingtong, seeing the figure in the carriage appear in his sight, and the person in the carriage who made him feel uneasy all this time, thinking of day and night, Grandfather Luo's eyes turned red. He rushed towards Luo Qingtong. He didn't even care about the remaining shoe. He directly lifted his leg and ran towards Luo Qingtong barefooted. Behind him, Empress Dowager Xianxia also rushed out with tears in her eyes. Qingtong. The two of them rushed towards Luo Qingtong one after another. Luo Qingtong also jumped down from the carriage and greeted them. "Grandfather. Grandmother." Luo Qingtong hugged the two of them. In an instant, tears fell from Grandfather Luo's eyes. "You brat." He wiped his tears and waved his hand, pretending to hit Luo Qingtong's head. "Grandfather was almost worried to death when you were gone for so long. How was it outside? Did you get hurt? Did you suffer? Did you suffer?" Grandfather Luo hugged Luo Qingtong, the tears in his eyes almost falling continuously. It was said that men didn't cry easily, only when they were deeply hurt. Chapter 3065. He had heard from Yan Yang and Su Xiaoxiao that Luo Qingtong had returned safe and sound. But now that he saw his granddaughter in front of him, he couldn't restrain himself. When Luo Qingtong suddenly disappeared, only the heavens knew how much pressure and worry he had felt. If it weren't for his legs being crippled, he would have left the true Spill continent to find Luo Qingtong. Now that he saw her return safe and sound, he was simply overjoyed. Luo Qingtong's heart was slightly bitter. After seeing Grandfather Luo see her return, he didn't ask anything else. He only asked if she was well, if she was hurt, if she was bitter. Her heart was filled with warmth and her eyes were slightly red. "I'm not bitter. Grandfather, I'm doing very well outside. Look, my strength has increased again." She thought that Grandfather Luo would be happy, but the latter's tears flowed even more fiercely. "Stinky girl, you're always lying. Do you think your grandfather is stupid? Your strength has increased by so much. How could you be doing well outside?" Grandfather Luo's throat choked with sobs. This stinky girl, she only told him the good news and not the bad. Luo Qingtong's expression was helpless. She really didn't feel bitter. Compared to when she was a supreme eye technique master, no one cared about her, no one cared about her, and no one worried about her. She was alone all her life, surrounded by enemies everywhere. Now she was doing very well. However, Luo Qingtong didn't want to argue with her grandfather. Otherwise, her grandfather would fly into a rage out of humiliation. Luo Qingtong coaxed her grandfather. "Hey, grandfather, whatever you say. Come, let's go in. Grandfather, I brought back a lot of good things for you this time," Luo Qingtong said, supporting Grandfather Luo as they walked inside. After crying, old Master Luo felt embarrassed again. However, he couldn't bear to shake off his granddaughter, so he was immediately supported back by Luo Qingtong with an awkward expression. After they left, an earth-shattering cheer rang out from the top of the forbidden grounds of the royal palace, shaking the heavens. "Haha, that's great. Her Highness has returned safely. Long live your Highness. Long live your Highness." Hearing the loud noise, the family Nangong disciples and Suiyu who came back with Luo Qingtong were all dumbfounded. They had never seen anyone with such fervent public sentiment and public opinion. Little Seven is so powerful. Suiyu and the others sighed. On the other hand, the disciples of the Nangong nobles were confused. "Little Seven? But we just heard them call her Qingtong?" They were naturally talking about Old Master Luo and Empress Dowager Yanxi. Oh, that's Little Seven's real name. Sui Yu and the others said carelessly, Little Seven is just her alias. Ah. The disciples of the Nangong nobles were shocked. Then, they stammered, is Miss Little Seven really from the Star Wilderness region or is she from this low-level continent? Everyone was shocked. They had never thought that the girl who could call the wind and summon the rain in their Dongting region and fight against Jiyuankuan and the others, who was also powerful and had a human martial arts realm guard, was actually from a low-level continent. Chapter 3066. While they were still in shock, Luo Qingtong had already entered the palace with Old Master Luo and the others. She dismissed the others and only stood in the main hall with Old Master Luo and Empress Dowager Yanxi. Then she smiled mischievously at Old Master Luo and took out the good things in her storage ring. Grandpa, Grandma, look, these are all the good things I got from the outside. Luo Qingtong had gained a lot in the Tianfeng domain this time. Although she didn't get anything in the Tianfeng inscription city because she left in a hurry. Later on she made a lot of money in Mercenary City and the Abandoned Continent. One of these two places was where people from all walks of life gathered in the Tianfeng domain. There were things of all kinds of star domains, continents and ranks. There were many things that were suitable for 7, 8 and 9 star domains, and Luo Qingtong had hoarded them. Later on, in the Abandoned Continent, Luo Qingtong got the things that Chu Xiaofeng and the others gave her. Those things could only be owned by the direct descendants of the Tianfeng Chu family. Every one of them was a top-grade resource in a 6-star domain. Not to mention the spiritual flowers and spiritual herbs that Luo Qingtong had taken. However, Luo Qingtong had other uses for those resources, so she didn't take them out. She had already thought about how to arrange those spiritual flowers and spiritual herbs. Moreover, in terms of cultivation resources alone, what she got from Mercenary City and Chu Xiaofeng and the others were enough. After Luo Qingtong took out all those things, Old Master Luo and Empress Dowager Yanxi were shocked. The two of them thought that the good things that Luo Qingtong said were some resources that she had obtained by chance outside. Originally they were looking at all of this with smiles. It wasn't easy for their granddaughter to get good things outside. They didn't want Luo Qingtong's things, but since their granddaughter took them out, it was okay to praise her. Old Master Luo's heart ached. He felt that Luo Qingtong was so dangerous outside. She was a little girl, but she was suddenly teleported out. Who knew how many difficulties and hardships she had encountered and how much suffering she had suffered? She even remembered to bring them some good things. Those things might have been exchanged with her life. However, when Luo Qingtong took out all those resources and treasures, they were stunned. Tong tong tong. Old Master Luo couldn't even speak properly. He looked at the things that Luo Qingtong took out. These days, as the main leader of the Celestial Evolution Holy Dynasty, how could he not know the division of the 7th, 8th and 9th star domains treasures? However, the items that Luo Qingtong took out were of a much higher level than the items in the 7th, 8th and 9th star sectors that he knew. Their auras were also much stronger. Oh my god. Old Master Luo stared at the small mountain of items in front of him, his brain almost unable to process them. Oh my god, this is too scary. At this moment, Old Master Luo suppressed all the sadness and heartache he felt when he saw Luo Qingtong. Could it be that this girl had robbed a 6-star region's high-level continent in the outer realm? But that couldn't be right. Which high-level continent's treasury would have such a comprehensive collection of things? Not to mention that some of the items were obviously not something that could be found in a high-level continent's treasury of a 6-star domain. Chapter 3067. Could it be that his granddaughter suddenly disappeared, went on a trip to the outer region, and destroyed a top force above the 6-star region? Old Master Luo wouldn't believe it. What was his granddaughter's strength when she was taken away? Ah no, at that time she was still in a state of no strength. What was going on? Old Master Luo and Empress Dowager Yanxi were surprised. On the other hand, Luo Qingtong smiled lightly. She didn't explain too much to Old Master Luo and the others. Speaking of which, it was really too long. What's more, it was very complicated. Luo Qingtong thought for a long time but didn't know where to start. She didn't want Old Master Luo and the others to worry about her because of what happened in the Tianfeng domain. After all, once she talked about what happened in the Tianfeng domain, she couldn't avoid Yu Mingqian's pursuit. For the time being, Luo Qingtong didn't want Old Master Luo to worry about these things for her. He was used to fighting alone. She would talk about it after she solved the things over there. Old Master Luo was right about one thing. Luo Qingtong was a person who only reported the good news and not the bad. She had long been used to bearing hardships and dangers alone. And there was nothing wrong with that. It wasn't that she didn't believe in Old Master Luo and the others, nor that she thought they were too weak. It was that she had been alone for too long. Except for Yi Qianxian, who intervened in her life because of his powerful strength and forcibly integrated into her life, she couldn't refuse and could only adapt. As for the others, she didn't know how to fight together with them. She had always been alone. She could build a force, but it was too difficult for her to have a sense of teamwork and comradeship. She wasn't that kind of person at all. Old Master Luo and Empress Dowager Xianxia were also very considerate. Although they were very surprised and shocked by the origin of these things, they didn't ask if Luo Qingtong didn't want to talk about it. Luo Qingtong had suffered enough outside. They didn't want their questions to bring back those bad memories. While Grandfather Luo and Empress Dowager Xianxia were shocked, Luo Qingtong smiled mysteriously and took out the 1,000 silkworm thread she obtained from the abandoned continent. She waved it in front of Old Master Luo and said with a smile, "Grandpa, do you know about this? Can heal your leg. In the future your legs will be the same as other people's. They won't be a burden to you anymore. Not only that, it doesn't need any recovery period. No matter how good the elixir was, even if it could restore Grandfather Luo's legs to their original state and allow him to receive the infusion of power, he still had to start cultivating from the beginning to the end. The strength of his legs would always be more or less different from the other parts of his body. This kind of difference was almost impossible to eliminate. Even though Luo Qingtong temporarily adjusted the strength of Luo's legs to be similar to the rest of his body, Luo Qingtong still couldn't control the strength of his legs. However, as one continued to improve and advance in cultivation, the difference in strength would still appear. But it was different with the 1,000 silkworm thread. The 1,000 silkworm thread would adjust its tenacity and hardness according to Grandfather Luo's strength. Chapter 3068. He stared blankly at the threads in Luo Qingtong's hands, while Empress Dowager Xianxi's face was also filled with indescribable excitement. "Qingtong, is what you said true? Your grandfather's legs are really..." Her words were trembling and her entire voice was trembling. Ever since Grandfather Luo's legs were crippled, he could still walk freely. But Empress Dowager Xianxia knew that he could no longer cultivate to improve his strength. Or rather, no matter how hard he cultivated, there was still such an obstacle and hidden danger left behind. It was a huge blow to him. Sometimes she often saw him standing alone on the city wall, looking at the soldiers in front of him with a face full of envy. Every time this happened, her heart would be especially painful. This man had been in the military all his life, and fighting was almost his instinct and all his meaning in life. But now he had returned to his prime, but he could almost no longer fight and cultivate. What kind of blow was this to him? But every time she couldn't help feeling sad and distressed, he would comfort her in turn, saying that this was also very good. At least he had enough time to accompany her to make up for the regret of not being able to be together before. But when Empress Dowager Xianxia heard these words, she felt even more sad. Because even if he could cultivate and fight, it wouldn't hinder their relationship. Grandfather Luo said this clearly because he didn't want her to feel distressed and sad. Hearing Luo Qingtong say that Grandfather Luo's legs could be saved, and at the same time his tenacity and strength were no different from before, she almost cried with joy. Old Master Luo's lips were trembling violently. He looked at Luo Qingtong and wanted to confirm with Luo Qingtong several times, but he didn't have enough courage. Instead, it was Empress Dowager Xianxia who spoke. After Empress Dowager Xianxia spoke, Luo Qingtong immediately smiled and nodded. "Yes, grandmother, it's true. But I still need some time before I can treat grandfather." After all, her blood-red eyes hadn't fully recovered yet. In the face of Grandfather Luo's legs, Luo Qingtong naturally didn't want to be negligent at all. Empress Dowager Xianxia immediately responded with a trembling voice. A period of time was a period of time. They had waited for so long, this little bit of time didn't make a difference. As she said this, she immediately wanted to ask Luo Qingtong how long it would take, but she heard Luo Qingtong think for a moment and say to them, "About 7 days." Empress Dowager Xianxia and Grandfather Luo didn't know what to say. Was this the period of time? What was 7 days? A period. They thought it would take a year or something. From the sound of it, 7 days wasn't a big deal at all. The two of them were very excited. And grandfather Luo Qingtong Yan Shi, Luo Qingtong's grandfather Yan's. Oh, by the way, Grandma, here are a few stalks of sky luo grass. Grandma's portion, you can take it now. But grandfathers, wait until I heal your legs, then take it. Luo Qingtong told the two of them, in addition to the 2 that you've taken, find a few absolutely loyal people to take the rest. If there are no candidates for the time being, then leave it first. Chapter 3069. Oh, old Master Luo took the Tian Luo grass in a daze. He looked at the few stalks of spiritual herbs that had a very strong aura. It was obvious that they were not ordinary spiritual herbs. He asked in a daze, Tong, what are these spiritual herbs for? Luo Qingtong was rummaging through the demonic weapons she got from the Yin Demon King in her storage ring to see if there was anything suitable for old Master Luo and Empress Dowager Yanxi. She could erase the demonic qi inside and give it to them. She said without raising her head, oh, it's the Tian Luo grass from the core of the continent. It's one of the great Dao spiritual objects. After you 2 take it, you'll immediately get the Tian Luo body and enter the Zun realm. Pfft. Old Master Luo had already put away the Tian Luo grass and was sitting on a chair and drinking tea to calm himself down. After all, the shock and surprise he received today was a little too big. However, when Luo Qingtong said that, he spat out the tea in his mouth. Fortunately, Empress Dowager Yanxi dodged in time. Otherwise, she would have been sprayed all over. Old Master Luo didn't have time to apologize to his wife. He just stared at Luo Qingtong with wide eyes and said in shock, Tian Luo grass. Great Dao spiritual object. Old Master Luo wondered if he had heard wrongly. Tian Luo grass, Great Dao spiritual object. This wasn't just a name Luo Qingtong said casually or deliberately. In fact, it wasn't an ordinary Tian Luo grass. It was a real heaven and earth spiritual object. Didn't you hear what Luo Qingtong said? It could immediately get the Tian Luo body. Not only that, its strength could directly enter the Zun realm. Luo Qingtong gave him such a heaven and earth spiritual object so casually. Old Master Luo clutched his chest that was suffocated from shock and kept thinking. How many Tian Luo grass did Luo Qingtong just give him? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. No, I can't count anymore. Elder Luo rubbed his dizzy head and quickly took out the sky luo grass from his storage ring and counted them again. 6. He cried out in shock. So many. When he spoke, Luo Qingtong's voice casually sounded. Yes, Grandpa, take it first. If it's not enough, I have more here. However, it's best if you choose those who are strong and talented. Only then can you maximize the benefits. Although this Tian Luo grass can instantly raise one's strength to the exalted realm, that person's strength has to be close to the exalted realm. Otherwise, I'll still need some time to improve. Also, I have to leave some for Su Yu and the others. Although Su Yu and the others might not be able to use it. Thinking about how Su Yu and the others were sold to the Qin family of highest heaven by the people of the Dark Colors Arena, Luo Qingtong's face turned cold. She had to deal with the matter here as soon as possible and go find them. Otherwise, who knew what would happen to them over there? The people of the Dark Colors Arena were simply damned. Luo Qingtong had almost turned the group of people of the Dark Colors Arena into ashes, but she still couldn't vent her anger. Chapter 3070. His own granddaughter actually had more. Luo Qingtong spoke of such a heavenly treasure as if it were cabbage. Grandfather Luo's heart was tangled. He originally thought that these heavenly treasures were too precious and that he couldn't take so many of them. It would be better to let Luo Qingtong take them back for other purposes. But before he could even open his mouth, his granddaughter had given him a critical blow. Since his granddaughter still had more, he would take them. As grandfather Luo thought this, he stretched out half of his hand to return some of the heavenly grass to Luo Qingtong. But at this time Luo Qingtong dropped another heavy bomb on them. That's right, grandfather, I came back this time to upgrade the true spill continent. I obtained the core of a high-grade continent and am preparing to upgrade the true spill continent to a high-grade continent. At that time this place will be able to produce immortal spirit energy. That is the high-grade core of an abandoned continent. But because of some reasons it regained its vitality. The core strength, the power of the great Dao and the immortal spirit energy are completely ownerless. They can perfectly fit into the core of our true spill continent. At that time I may need to go into seclusion for a period of time. Also, after the true spill continent is upgraded, I am preparing to connect it with the little Doe's boundary. Then you can go in and cultivate whenever you want. Inside I have placed. Luo Qingtong spoke of her plans. Grandfather Luo and Empress Dowager Yanxi were both stunned. As they listened to Luo Qingtong's words, they felt as if they were in a dream. Upgrade the true spill continent to a high-grade continent. It was unknown how many years it would take for a continent to evolve and upgrade. And for a low-grade continent like the true spill continent, it was impossible for it to be upgraded to a high-grade continent. But this law had been broken in front of Luo Qingtong. Not only that, but Luo Qingtong had upgraded it to a high-grade continent. There was no need for it to be upgraded to a medium-grade continent. And the core of an abandoned continent that regained its vitality. What did his granddaughter do when she went out? How could she obtain such a thing? And she could bring it back perfectly. Oh my God. Grandfather Luo and Empress Dowager Yanxi had been together for so many years that they could be considered experienced and knowledgeable. But after Luo Qingtong went out and came back, everything she did shocked them. They didn't pay attention to what Luo Qingtong said about the connection between the true spill continent and the boundary. They only nodded in a daze. Luo Qingtong felt very helpless as she watched. It seemed that the bombs she had dropped this time were a little too big. Her grandparents couldn't take it anymore. Forget it, I'll tell them about the rest when I have the chance in the future in case they can't get over it. As Luo Qingtong thought about it, she immediately hid the demonic weapon, the Dongting region, and Chu Tianyi's identity from Old Master Luo and Empress Dowager Yanxi. She didn't even mention Sui Yu's group or the people sent by the Nangong family. Of Luo O Louis. With that in mind, Luo Qingtong went to rest. Chapter 3071. At the same time in Star City, the people of the Lu family had also rushed over after receiving the news from Lu Yu. The group of elders and strong cultivators of the Lu family quietly entered the mansion of the Lu family without alerting anyone. Are you sure the sector beast is in the hands of the girl named Luo Qingtong? An elder of the Lu family asked in a deep voice. He was at the 5th level of the human martial realm. In the Lu family he was one of the masters second only to the head of the family. He was very powerful. This time, almost all the people who were at the same level as him had come to the Star Wilderness. The news of the sector beast was very precious. They didn't want to miss any opportunity this time. Therefore, except for the head of the family, all the elders and elites were sent out. At the same time in the Star Wilderness, a large number of people of the Lu family were stationed on a remote abandoned continent next to Star City. They were waiting for the news to be confirmed before making a move. As soon as he spoke, Lu Yu's voice was heard. Not yet, but there is an 80% chance it is her. As he said this, he immediately told them what Mo Zhuling had said and the information they had found. Even if it isn't her, it definitely has something to do with her. Moreover, through her identity we can easily find out who has the sector beast. Lu Yu said. In fact, he didn't completely believe Mo Zhuling. But Luo Qingtong was indeed the best breakthrough. No matter whether she had the sector beast or not, she was the actual ruler of the true spill continent. Hearing his words, all the elders of the Lu family nodded and said in a deep voice, yes, this girl named Luo Qingtong is indeed the best breakthrough. However, even so, young master, your decision to take her as a concubine was a bit too hasty. A girl from such a low-level continent, even if her status is slightly higher than people from other low-level continents, is still a low-level person. If you marry into our Lu family, it will inevitably stain our bloodline. The elder of the Lu family who spoke first said. They knew that Lu Yu had said that he wanted to marry Mo Zhuling. However, that was just a casual remark. It wasn't like he was serious about marrying her. As for this Luo Qingtong, if he wanted to get the whereabouts of the sector beast out of her, he would have to marry her for real. At that time, the Lu family would have a stain on their reputation. The elder of the Lu family was extremely unwilling. In his opinion, a lowly person from a low-level continent did not even have the qualifications to be their maidservant. Not to mention marrying Lu Yu as a concubine. When he spoke, the elders of the Lu family all nodded in agreement. According to their thoughts, since they knew that there were indeed sector beasts in the true spill continent, then they might as well kill their way in. Whether or not anyone obtained the sector beasts, all they had to do was force them to hand it over. If someone had formed a contract with him, he would just have to kill the other party. That Luo Qingtong might be backed by a 6-star field or a 7-star field's individual practitioner. If possible, I don't want to use force to settle this. The most important thing is that we are too big of a target. If someone notices what we are doing and finds out about the existence of sector beasts, we will be in big trouble. Lu Yu said. He's just a concubine. If you don't like her, you can just deal with her after you get the sector beast. Lu Yu didn't think much of it. She was just a girl from a low-level continent. A girl like Mo Zhuling from the Star Alliance, he would just throw her away after using her. He would just have to deal with her in the same way. He could even have a taste of her.